On this edition of Gameball Cards Kickoff, we're going to recap the top 4 matchups from this past weekend, as well as we're going to bring you the top 4 matchups for this weekend to be on the lookout for. And also in our second segment, we're going to talk about the Big Ten Conference and whether or not that conference might be just a little bit overrated. We're going to talk about 4 matchups in that conference that resulted in losses. Always, it's going down right here, Gameball Cards Kickoff, and it begins now. What's happening, everyone? Welcome to Gameball Cards Kickoff, where the football season never ends. I'm Marcus Young Genius Jenkins.
I'm Michael Riley.
And of course, we're going to hold it down this particular week with our brother, Luke Hartnett. We're going to hold it down for you. Salute to the brother as he's doing his thing back in Topeka. So definitely shout out to everybody in Topeka as well, everybody in Lawrence and everybody in between. But Luke, we got you on this
We
one.
got your back, Luke.
Yes, sir. We're going to start with the recap segment of Gameball Cards Kickoff. We're going to talk about the 4 matches from last weekend, starting with the number 5 Oklahoma. They will come out on top of Iowa State by a score of 37-27. Number 17 Boise State will come out in a loss on this one, actually, over Oklahoma State by a score of 44-21, a huge margin, actually, on that one. Now, the 2 matchups in particular that we're actually going to break down for you, we're going to start with the LSU Tigers. They would escape Auburn by a score of 22-21. Mike, what do you think about this matchup?
Well, the game came down to a wire, as I was alluded to, which team would make the less mistakes and which team would have the ball at the end. I felt like Auburn was on the aggressive part and was doing a good job, a little bit offensively, but defensively they was shutting down, stopping LSU's offense for the time being till they let them get the momentum going. And what hurt them is that some penalties at the end, which put LSU to a more field goal range, and the Auburn offense didn't capitalize on first down opportunities to run the clock out after forcing LSU going 3 and out. So by that span, you give LSU more time and you give them back in the ball game. But if the offense was able to get more plays and at least get a first down, it would have been game over. But it was a quick 3 and out. Auburn has to do a better job of play calling instead of forcing passes and all that. They could have did a better job with that. And defensively, they did their part, but at the end, they gave up too many plays and put LSU in field goal range, and LSU won by a field goal of 1 point. So it was a good game. That came down to the end of the wire, but LSU was a better team. They made more plays offensively, and defensively they was able to hold their own after being outscored 14-0 in the first half. So they made some adjustments, and they did a good job there. LSU right now is feeling confident. They smacked down Miami, and they beat Auburn, 2 very good top 10 teams, and getting the win on the road at Auburn is a huge statement for LSU. So if they could get one more win under their belt in the SEC conference, then we can start talking about them putting the college playoff. For Auburn, they have to find a way to bounce back. It's now or never for now, because after this loss, you can't lose no more or else you'll be out of the college football playoff. So Auburn has to win out. It's going to be a very tough schedule. It's not going to be that easy. If Auburn can win out and possibly get into the conference title, they could probably be in the conversation for a college football playoff appearance.
So obviously this would sting them just a little bit. Do you think that this loss to LSU, do you think that this loss would knock them out of the top 10, at least for the time being?
For the time being, yes. But if Auburn somehow get win out If LSU loses, it would kind of be a tie, but LSU has that edge over Auburn, so they have to somehow, some way pray for Auburn to lose 2 games. So if LSU, excuse me, somehow, some way they have to pray for LSU to lose 2 games. If Auburn wins out, if LSU loses at least 2 games, then Auburn would be back on the leaderboard in that conversation. So it's a sting for Auburn. It kind of sets themselves back, but they have to regroup and go on to the next opponent and move on for that. It just hopefully they can win out and let their destiny take control of itself.
All right, once again, Auburn was ranked number 7 over this past weekend before falling to number 12. LSU, again, by a score of 22-21. So it's definitely going to be interesting, like you mentioned, to see how Auburn bounces back and how they get back into the playoff conversation, like you mentioned, and what this does for LSU with a big win for them. We're going to move on to the second matchup that we're going to discuss, and that is number 4, Ohio State would be victorious over number 15, TCU, by a score of 40-28. Mike, how would you break down this matchup?
Well, it was the first 3 quarters of the game I was watching. It was a dogfight. TCU was the aggressor. They was not scared of the Ohio State offense, especially that quarterback Haskins, who's looked tremendous in the first 2 games. This was his test against the Gary Patterson TCU defense. They was flying everywhere, making them look uncomfortable in the pocket. They was bringing pressure all over the place. You could bring pressure from the safety come out to the middle. They was bringing pressure from the cornerback side. They were just mixing up blitzes and confuse the Ohio State offense and cause confusion, force 3 and outs. And by doing that, you keep the Ohio State offense that's high power on the sideline and put their defense on the sideline, try to take advantage of that. TCU did a very good job after the Ohio State field goal, if I remember. They was the first ones to score the actual touchdown with a big play. Then Ohio State answers back, and TCU offensively did a good job of attacking the aggressiveness of Ohio State defense, which was do bubble screens and just keep it simple, not taking chances for turnover, wear them down, do the hurry-up offense. That's how you wear down a very good defense, and that caused trouble for Ohio State to substitute and all that. And plus, when Nick Bosa went down with the abdomen injury, that was a kind of a huge blow the first part of the game for Ohio State defense. So TCU did a good job of that. But when Ohio State start rolling, when they start getting their first points of the game, then Ohio State will start getting the groove and making some noise. And Ohio State could have been up by more, but there was too many drop passes by one receiver. Mm-hmm. I mean, he dropped a touchdown pass that could have been 7-0. He dropped a wide open catch that could have been a first down instead of 3 and out. He dropped another touchdown pass. So that was unusual for Ohio State to see to have drop passes. Now, once then they was on the way to score, then they got called for a penalty, so they had to kick a field goal. At halftime, it was 14-13. Then the second half, Ohio State came out, actually TCU came out, start moving the ball. Then they had that long 96-yard run for a touchdown. So that was a game changer right there. Then Ohio State came back and scored a touchdown and fell on, I think they fell a 2-point conversion. It was something like that, I forgot. Then once when the game started getting tight and TCU had a critical fumble, and which Ohio State took advantage of, and they turned that into points. Then that kind of shook TCU a little bit, but they were still hanging in there, still being aggressor. Then at one point with TCU forced Ohio State 3 and out, the offense came out, and all of a sudden, I didn't know why the quarterback threw it, but it was supposed to be a little pitch pass, and the defensive line came and intercepted, took it back to the house, and now Ohio State retakes the lead. So it was just one of those things that it came down to the wire, but at one point, Ohio State was able to make 2 more plays to score a few more points than TCU to win the game. Defensively, they adjusted well. They caused havoc and they forced turnovers. And was all said and done, Ohio State scored the last touchdown. It was pretty much a done deal for TCU. TCU had a well game plan. but you have to play 4 quarters of good football to beat a good Ohio State team. So this stinks for TCU, but they'll bounce back from it.
I would definitely agree with what Mike just said. It was a dogfight. If you missed that game, you missed a great college football game.
It was a great battle.
A lot of mistakes, like you mentioned, by Ohio State, but they did find a way to capitalize, kind of bounce back from their mistakes. And one thing that you hear a lot is you forget that next play and you're on to the next. And that seemed like that's what Ohio State did a few times during that game.
And now Urban Meyer served this 3-game suspension. He's back. So it's same business as usual. They're going to arrest a starting defensive end, Nick Bosa, against a little nonchalant team, which they'll blow out. But once they start getting to the conference play, that's when they need them.
So definitely welcome back Urban Meyer as well, which is obviously huge for Ohio State. And that's just another thing that just boosts their confidence and build their morale moving into this coming weekend. So Ohio State on the up and up. Once again, they would beat TCU by a score of 40-28. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss the Big Ten Conference, and Mike is going to talk about whether or not this conference is a little overrated. We're going to talk about 3 matchups that took place over last weekend that resulted in losses. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that debate and much more. Coming back, Gameball Calls Kickoff. We'll return.
Don't go anywhere.
What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Gameball Calls Kickoff, of course, where the football season never ends. Now, in this second segment, we're going to talk about the Big Ten Conference and whether or not we're going to decide whether this conference might be just a little bit overrated. There were 3 losses in that conference over the weekend, starting with number 6 Wisconsin, as they would fall to BYU by a score of 24-21. Mike, what happened to Wisconsin in that game?
Well, they got a little ahead of themselves, and they were kind of cocky, and they would start feeling themselves, but BYU caught them slipping. BYU was the better team, and they expect BYU to come in their own house and beat them like that. I'm like, wow. I mean, you had all the stats in the world, you still lost. You had too many mistakes, too many penalties for that matter, and turnovers played a big part as well. And also the defense didn't do a job enough to stop BYU's offense from scoring that last field goal to win that game. You got to give what credit's due to BYU. You have to give them a lot of credit. They had all the confidence in the world. Nobody believed that they could go in there and knock off a number 6 ranked team in their home and stun a crowd like that. BYU did an excellent job. They executed the game plan, and there's still some things they got to work on, but offense, defense, and special teams, those 3 phases right there, caused them to force Wisconsin in a bad situation, and they took advantage of that, and they won off of that, especially at the final drive of the game where they was up to them and they was keeping going, miss with some run and pass a little bit here and there, the RPO, known as the run pass option. So once they got in field goal range, they got in good field goal range for the kicker to kick and the kicker make it, and rest is history for BYU. So that has not been done in a long time for BYU. So good job to BYU for playing hard and get the win on the road. If I'm Wisconsin, I am looking at myself in the mirror like, what the hell was going on? This is a piss-poor performance. It was a piss-poor finish at the end. If I'm the coach, it's going to be hell week for Wisconsin and the practice, hell week.
Now, what I'm going to ask you is they're ranked number 6. A loss like this, a disappointing loss, mind you, at home to BYU, do you think that this could be the loss, even if they were to win for some reason, win every single game for the rest of the season? Do you think that this one loss could be the one thing that does knock them out of that playoff hunt?
Absolutely, because you have to look at for the committee's perspective, like, who did you lose to? They're going to look at the BYU tape and be like, y'all lost to BYU. And other teams look better than you in that week. So this could potentially hurt them in the playoff chances of getting to there.
Number 6, Wisconsin. Once again, they would fall to BYU by a score of 21-6. The second matchup, Troy against Nebraska. You really don't hear much about Troy on the football scene, but they would defeat the Nebraska Cornhuskers by a score of 24-19. What happened with Nebraska?
Well, that's twice Troy upset a team in their own stadium. Last year, they beat LSU in LSU.
That is true.
And this year, they did the same thing repeatedly, but in Nebraska, following Nebraska to 0-2, and Scott Frost, as a coach debut in Nebraska, is 0-2. So this is a kind of rebuilding for him as he take over, but to lose like that twice in at home, it's kind of a good sign, but it's his first season as a Nebraska head coach. That's where his alma mater is. So I feel like defensively they'll get better. They'll make some adjustments and all that. They have to find a way to finish games at the end. Offensively, it's got to get better. Defense has got to get better. Special teams got to get better because Troy took advantage of that and scored points when it's time to score close-out games. Troy is known to do this. It's not new to see us watching Troy knock off a good team at home. They did against LSU. Now it's Nebraska. So you got to give credit to Troy. And Nebraska right now, it's on the building lynch, but it's not really looking too good. They have to find a way to bounce back. And like I said, offense has to get better. Defense has to get better. Special teams has to get better. It only get better as time grows. And this is his full first season as Nebraska head coach. Once it starts going, then you start getting more recruits coming in. Then you start being your own players. So once that happens, I think Nebraska will be fine. But right now, it's just a beginning for Scott Frost.
So with that being said, you would give Scott Frost basically the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, you got to give him the benefit of that. So coming from UCF to Nebraska, UCF, he built that team. Nebraska is other coaches, players, and all that. So once you get your system, your input on it, it'll get better.
All right, Nebraska, of course, Scott Frost's first season as head coach, so definitely, has plenty of time still left to prove itself and what he can do with that Nebraska program, which is, like you mentioned, is also his alma mater. Now, the third matchup we're going to talk about is Akron defeating Northwestern by a score of 39-34. I mean, really, a lot of people really wouldn't make a big deal out of this. I mean, I could see someone like LeBron James celebrating because that's his hometown, so I can imagine him celebrating for Akron's win, but for Big Ten fans and Northwestern in particular, what happened with this matchup?
Northwestern had their chances and they blew it. Akron is not a scrub team. I mean, they can compete with the best, so that's why that makes them 3-0 going right now. So, man, but Northwestern's got a lot of work to do. They squeaked by against Purdue in week 1, and they had a loss in week 2. And this loss hurts them more than anything because now you just like, what we got to do to get better. So offense has to get better, and the passing game has to get better on the offensive side. Defense, you got to get better at tackling. You can't have missed tackles. You got to force 3 and outs. You can't give up big plays that turn into points. That's what hurt Northwestern at the end, and Akron was able to take advantage of that. So kudos and give credit to Akron to go into Northwestern and beat them at the end of part of the game, which led to score 39-34, 5 points. So this will put their program on the map a little bit more since they got a big win against a very good team and a good conference. So this is a good win for Akron. Big Ten is in trouble right now because their college playoff chances are looking a little slim, except for Ohio State, right, which they got there, which they're up there. So we're not going to talk about Ohio State. We're talking about the other teams in that conference. The Big Ten somehow, some way, has to step up and get their name out there. If Ohio State wins out, they're in the college playoff. If Ohio State loses, then it'll hurt the conference chances of representing that conference getting to the college playoff. So as of right now, Big Ten is a little overrated. Everybody was hyping, said there's good teams here and there that could go in and win. You had BYU going to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin lost it at home. You had Nebraska 0-2 and lost against Georgia, upset Sterner. Now you had Akron going to Northwestern and with upset Sterner and beating them. So that, to me, is a little overrated. A lot of people had this conference saying that it could be the best conference to go with the SEC and the ACC. But right now, Big 12 is kind of taking over that. Even though TCU lost to Ohio State, Big 12 is looking kind of good in that spot over the Big 10. So Big 10 got some work to do. If they don't clear up right now, chances are they might not be in the college football playoff. That's if Ohio State wins out. If Ohio State wins out, then they're in. If they have one loss, chances are they might not get in.
So to answer the question, do you think as of right now that the Big Ten is overrated?
Right now, yes. But as the preseason progresses, if they start to get their stuff fixed a little bit better and all that, then they'll be in. Oh, excuse me. I meant to break up. Penn State is also undefeated, so you can't forget about Penn State. That's my apologies on that. So you looking at Ohio State and Penn State are the two remain undefeated in that conference. So if they were to win out and they'll meet either in the game or the conference, they'll meet in the game a couple weeks down. If they meet in a conference championship game, one of them has to have at least an undefeated record goes against one another. So let's see what happens. But until that time comes, they have to win out. And when they win out and face each other, then one of the teams that win against each other has to win out for them to be represented in the college football playoff as the Big Ten Conference.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Mike said, as of right now, doesn't mean that still can't change as the season progresses. But, of course, like you mentioned, you still have Ohio State out there. You still have Penn State. Those two teams are winning football games. So those two teams alone could kind of shift the balance, I guess, of the Big Ten. So we'll find out what happens as the season goes on. And that's going to conclude our second segment right here on Gameball College Kickoff. And when we come back, we'll talk about, of course, none other than bringing you the top 4 matchups going into this coming weekend, as well as give you our predictions for all 4 of those matchups. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Gameball College Kickoff. We'll be back in a minute.
We'll be back.
What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Gameball College Kickoff. Of course, where the football season never ends. We are at our third and final segment, and that is the top 4 matchups heading into this coming weekend in college football. The first matchup we're going to talk about is number 22 Texas A&M taking on number 1 Alabama and them Crimson Boys. Mike, break down this matchup.
Man, this could come down to a wire. It's going to be a good matchup. Despite the Texas A&M Aggies are ranked number 22, they're going to put up a fight. They're damn near won against Clemson at home. It was for that controversy catch call, whatever. They could go in there and compete with the best. Even though Jimbo Fisher doesn't officially have his guys yet, he's having them play ball and compete, especially on the offensive side with the pro-style system and all that. It feels like the quarterback is more comfortable in the pro-style system instead of the RPO, which is known as run-pass options. And defensively, they got to ball out against Alabama. Because one mistake, Alabama's going to capitalize it and make you pay for it. Alabama's like the Patriots, but only into college football. So they'll make you pay for it and all that, and go in there with confidence and know that you can beat Alabama. It has been done before. When Johnny Manziel was a quarterback, he went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. So it can't be done, but you got to play a perfect game, close to perfect game, not have any mistakes at all. Because if you do, chances are you're going to lose against Crimson Tide. So you got to have a game plan. You got it well executed. You want points, but I'd rather take touchdowns than field goals because touchdowns makes much difference than a field goal. Unless this is a tie game at the final seconds of the game. So we'll see how Texas A&M play offensively and defensively. As for Alabama, you cannot look over Texas A&M. I mean, they're playing with confidence in the world, but Alabama's been on the road, especially starting Tula. I can't pronounce his last name. The quarterback for the Crimson Tide, he's balling, and he's putting his name as one of the Heisman candidates to win it. I mean, he's balling out. Alabama's playing good ball offensively. The pass game is efficient, is good. The running game's going, and defense, Alabama is loaded, is stacked with defensive line cornerbacks like Clemson. So those are the best two defenses in the country. So for that display, it's going to be a dogfight, and Alabama cannot overlook against Texas A&M. Nick Saban will put them in the right place to be successful and make plays to win this game.
All right, number 1 Alabama, Texas A&M, always a good matchup. The second matchup we're going to talk about is the Kansas State Wildcats taking on number 12 West Virginia and the Mountaineers. What do you like about this matchup, Mike?
Well, it's on the road, and it's one of the tough places to play, especially at West Virginia and Morgantown. Their fans going crazy, and this might be one of the best offenses in the Big 12, probably in the country, besides Oklahoma, that K-State faces all year. Now, K-State didn't do a very good job against Mississippi State, which ran all over them in Manhattan. So how would they go against West Virginia's high-powered offense? You talk about there are stacked with weapons. Their receivers is average at least 6 foot or taller. That is crazy. You got the running back in the backfield. You probably got the best quarterback in the Big 12, and Will Grier, he is up for the Heisman candidate. So K-State cannot afford to make mistakes. They can't beat themselves. They have to execute a game plan to go into Morgantown and get the win. Would they do that? I don't know. The offense, you got to run out the clock. You got to be physical and stick to one quarterback. I don't really like the 2 quarterback system that K-State does. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you got to stick with one quarterback and go from there. Now, the quarterback has a bad game or something, then you can switch the other quarterback. For right now, just stick with one, and defensively, you got to be very disciplined against this West Virginia high-power offense, because if you're not, they'll take advantage of it, and they can score quickly, because if you make a mistake and turn off the ball over to West Virginia, that's 7 points automatic right there. So they have to execute that in special teams. Special teams has to play good. Special teams has to be the key part of K-State to being successful on the road. If the special teams successful, that helps the offense and defensively be successful. Now for West Virginia, K-State is a really talented team, but you have to take advantage of their weakness. If I'm them, I'm going to watch film over against Mississippi State, how to capitalize on that. First, you start with the run, then you go into your pass attack mode. Just keep mixing it up. Just keep catching them off guard, and you have to be able to take advantage of what K-State gives you. They don't beat themselves a lot, but against Mississippi State, there was a lot of open holes in that running game. So get the running game going started. I'm taking a page out of Mississippi State offense and how they execute against K-State defense. Now, West Virginia defense, they have to play a good game against a very talented K-State offense. They have to force them to be one-dimensional, stop the run, stack the box, and you got to watch out for that sneaky little run pass play. They like to catch people off guard either for a big game or touchdown. They have to watch out for that, and they have to communicate. If the defense can do that, then West Virginia more likely win this game. And special teams for West Virginia is critical because K-State is one of the top 10 teams, punt returns, kick returns in the country in special teams. So that's key success for West Virginia.
All right, Kent State going into Morgantown. Tough place to play, like you mentioned, on the road, number 12. It's going to be a tough one for the Wildcats. I can't wait to see this matchup this coming weekend. The third matchup we're going to talk about is number 17 TCU, as they are set to face off against the Texas Longhorns.
This is going to be a battle of the state Texas, Big 12 Conference, TCU versus Texas. It can't get no better than that, especially in the recruiting area where you go into each other's territories fighting for that recruiting a player. So this also makes this matchup interesting. TCU is coming off a heartbreaking loss against Ohio State, even though it was 12, 13 points, but it's still a loss because they feel like they let that game slip away at the end. So TCU has to go back to the drawing board. They have to look at film, break down film. What did they do wrong at the end to not make more plays to win against Ohio State? So they have to do that. Offensively, you got to learn how to finish. You got to learn how to finish plays, score touchdowns at the end, and not turn off ball over. Because if they didn't turn the ball over, TCU was riding with the momentum. They could have won that game, but turnovers hurt TCU, so they have to fix the turnovers. And defensively, you got to finish. You got to find a way to finish and bring that same energy in you did the first three quarters against Texas, because Texas beat down USC at home 37-14. So it's going to be a dogfight, but if TCU wants to win this game, they have to look at film, what they did wrong, and they have to correct it, and they have to execute it to their max. Because if they can do that, they'll win against Texas. Now, for Texas, against TCU, you can't overlook TCU because they about to beat Ohio State. So if I'm Texas, I'm moving on for the USC game. You got to focus. Offensively, the pass game has to get better. I mean, it was okay against USC, but you talking about TCU, one of the best defenses in the Big 12. They have pass rushers that can get to the quarterback quick like that. So you have to get the running game going. You have to be consistent in the passing game. If the quarterback is consistent in the passing game, give his player one-on-one chances to make plays, especially the tall receiver that they got, then they can feel confident about themselves and be able to score points. Now, defensively, TCU got some speedy playmakers on that offensive side, especially at the running back. So it's all dependent on the front seven. The linebackers have to stop the run. If they can do that, penetrate, get back to the backfield, force third long, then you have a shot. Now, the key part, as I said, for the other matchup is special teams. TCU stresses special teams, and they're very good at special teams. So Texas special teams has to be on point because if they don't, one play could be a difference maker. So offense, defense, special teams has to be the key factor for Texas to win against a good team like TCU at home.
TCU, Texas. TCU bouncing back or attempting to bounce back from a loss to Ohio State. I think they're going to have a huge chip on their shoulders. We'll see what happens in that matchup. The final matchup we're going to discuss, the number 18 Wisconsin Badgers, of course, fell to BYU the previous weekend, looking to take on the Iowa Buckeyes on the road.
Against Iowa Hawkeyes.
Hawkeyes, excuse me.
This could be a track in for Wisconsin. Iowa is a tough place to play, especially if you're a ranked opponent. Iowa has known for knocking off top 10 teams in the past at home. Ohio State, a year ago, they smoked them. Penn State, they about had them, but let it slip away. The year before, Michigan. The year before, Michigan State, so on, so on. So this is a possible track in for Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin has to watch film and has to figure out what they did wrong and all that. And plus, you're going into a very hostile environment. And this is a pretty good chance for Iowa to beat a good team like Wisconsin so they could be on the map. So if Wisconsin can find a way to fix their mistakes against BYU offense, defense, and take advantage of it, they're able to win this game. But Iowa is feeling a lot of confidence right now. They're at home. It's one of the biggest stages, and they feel like they can win. Iowa has to stop the running game and force Wisconsin to be a one-dimensional offense, which is passing, and on defense. Offensively, you got to be consistent. You can't have mistakes. You can't have penalties, and you have to take advantage of touchdowns instead of field goals. You get your field goals here, but I want touchdowns and field goals. You're at home. So we'll see how this plays out on Saturday.
All right, and that's going to lead us to my favorite part personally. I don't know about y'all, but the predictions part of Gameball College Kickoff, starting, of course, with Texas A&M and Alabama. Mike, who do you got?
My gut tells me Texas A&M, but I'm going to go with my heart. Alabama. They're at home. They're loaded. I'm going to say first half or first part of the game is going to be close, but Alabama makes one or two plays to score 2 touchdowns to win it. So I'm going to say the score, Alabama wins at home against Texas A&M 42-28.
It's interesting that you said what you said because part of me does want to say Texas A&M. I'm not going to lie to you, and I was thinking the same thing. But this is Alabama.
You
this
can't
is
pick against the tie.
You can't, and that's the thing. This is where Alabama usually shines the most. Is when they have tough tests like this, like Texas A&M, and this is what they practice for. This is
now if they was on the road, I would pick Texas A&M, but they're at home, so you can't go against Alabama at home.
I like Alabama in this one because, I mean, like I just said, they practice for games like this in the summer. They practice for perfection. This is what they do. This is who they are. Like you mentioned, and I agree with that. They are basically the New England Patriots of college football. And Saban is like a Bill Belichick. He gets the best out of his players. You know, the best one to play for him. And like I said, they practice for games like this. I like the Crimson Tide at home. I'm going to say a score 35-14, I think is what they'll pull it off at home for the Crimson Tide. This one, I definitely want to hear your pick for this one, Mike. Kansas State, West Virginia.
I like West Virginia at this one. I feel like offensively and defensively, they don't match up with West Virginia's offensively and defensively, especially offensive-wise. And West Virginia is going to find a way to take advantage of mistakes that K-State is possibly going to make. So I like West Virginia to win at home, score of 31-20. And shout out to my buddy Brandon Phoenix, who does Raspy Voice Kids of West Virginia. Got that song stuck in my head. Hail West Virginia. Shout out to you, Brandon.
Salute. All right. I agree. I like West Virginia. They are tough to beat at home. That crowd is going to be off the charts. No disrespect to Kansas State, but I think it'll be too much West Virginia. I'm going to give this one a score. I'm going to say 28. I'm going to give this one 28-6, honestly. I think it's going to be a high margin. I just think too much West Virginia. The third matchup, TCU, of course, looking to bounce back from that loss over Ohio State against Texas. Who do you got?
I like TCU on the road against Texas. I feel like they got a bad taste of the mouth against Ohio State for letting that game slip away. Gary Patterson will get the players refocused and get back on track, and they'll execute all 3 phases of the game to win, offense, defense, and special teams. At Texas right now, I don't feel like they don't match up with TCU very well in those factors. So I'm going to say TCU wins at Texas. It'll be a close one, but TCU will find a way to pull it out by 10. So I'm going to say TCU wins the score of 34-24.
I like TCU in this one as well. They definitely have a chip on their shoulder. Like you said, I mean, if you watch that game, they did basically seem like they let a game slip away against a tough opponent in Ohio State. Mm-hmm. They're basically, I'm pretty sure they're going to be looking at game film all week on that loss, and they're going to make those corrections against Texas. Unfortunately, Texas is the next thing standing away for them. I like TCU in this one. Texas is going to come out with a lot of energy because they are at home. But ultimately, I'm going to give this one a score. I'm going to say they're going to come out 28-14 on top. And the final matchup, the Wisconsin Badgers also, of course, looking to bounce back from their loss to BYU, taking on Iowa on the road.
I'm going to go upset alert. I said it. Iowa wins at home against Wisconsin. We've seen this scene before. Iowa is a tough place to play at home. Even though they're not ranked, rankings don't mean nothing. I say Iowa has everything going against them, especially that home advantage on the field. I'm like, you talk about they beat down Ohio State. They barely lost to Penn State on the last second play. They beat Michigan. They beat Michigan State at home. Something tells me that Iowa is ready for this game. They are born for this game, and they are going to win this game. So I'm going to say the Iowa Hawkeyes upset the Wisconsin Badgers to score of 28-20. It'll be close, but Iowa will make one more play to win the game. So 28-20, Iowa Hawkeyes.
To tell you the truth, I'm going to go with my gut feeling. My heart tells me Wisconsin just because they're embarrassed. They're embarrassed. They lost to BYU. They went from number 6 to now they're ranked 18th in the country. They're going to have a lot to prove going into this game. I can see what you're talking about as far as there being an upset because Iowa is a very good football team, even though they are not ranked in the top 25. I just think Wisconsin they have a lot to prove because you go from a 6th ranked team in the top 10, you could be, looking at a playoff season, and that basically could have got sucked away from you with the loss to BYU. So now they're fighting to try to get back into that conversation. So I'm going to say Wisconsin squeaks this one out. I'm going to say it's going to be a late game field goal in this one. I'm going to say they're going to win 17-14. They're going to find a way to get it done. And that's going to do it for this week's edition of Gameball Cards Kickoff.
Social media, Facebook, email, Twitter, clothing line website, Instagram, YouTube. The descriptions will be down below. Just follow us on all social media outlets. Clothing website, that's tokendesigns.topeka.com/Gameball. That's TOKAN, token, not token, designs.topeka.com/Gameball. And Luke, Facebook, Luke Harnett, and Twitter, that's Luke Harnett 2.
Once again, shout out to Luke Harnett, doing your thing. Best of luck to you, man, and we'll see you next week. Hopefully we held it down good for you this week on Gameball Cards Kickoff, and we'll see you next week. And also be on the lookout for that new installment of Gameball NFL End Zone coming at you as well.